Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ten Under 10 on the Hoosier Network. I'm Graham Nash, of course, alongside Adam Oppenheim, bringing you more updates from women's sports around the Big Ten. Today is going to be a good old-fashioned scores and discussion episode without a trip to the film room. So let's get right into it, starting with women's basketball. The fourth-ranked USC Trojans had a good week, taking down number 22 Michigan State by 8 and number 25 Illinois by 10. The third-ranked UCLA Bruins also took down the Illini at home. The Bruins won by 15. However, UCLA then went on the road to take on Iowa, and the Bruins, they barely squeaked out the win, winning by 2 points in Carver Hawkeye. Eighth-ranked Ohio State lost on the road by 10 to the unranked Indiana Hoosiers, but they were able to smoke unranked Purdue on their home floor by a whopping 52 points. As for Indiana, they couldn't get their second win of the week in East Lansing. The 22nd ranked Spartans won by 8. Lastly, number 21 Maryland beat unranked Northwestern on the road by a slim 6-point margin. So Adam, we'll turn back to you now. First, let's look at that UCLA-Iowa game. The Bruins only won by 2. What happened?
I mean, it was a crazy finish. Elena Arno-Salo getting fouled at the end, which looked like it could have been an offensive foul on a screen. But then Addison O'Grady attempting a 3. She hasn't attempted one the whole year. Was 1 for 5 from 3 in her career. And UCLA was just like, all right, we're going to leave her open. She airballed. But it was a really interesting fourth quarter because no one could score for the first 4 minutes. There was, I think, 2 field goals made, 1 by each team. Lucy Olsen got fouled down the stretch on a 3-pointer, knocked in all 3 free throws. And Lucy Olsen did not have a great game. She was 5 for 21 from the floor. The fact that Iowa tied that game, and then the foul, which is pretty controversial in my opinion, didn't think, I mean, it was a call you need to make either one way or the other. I thought it could have been an offensive foul on a moving screen to give it back to Iowa in a tie game. But still, UCLA, they found a way to win.
Those Hawkeyes, they beat USC not that long ago.
That's
nearly
right, yeah.
Took down UCLA as well. But let's move on. How concerned are you for the Ohio State Buckeyes after their loss to Indiana?
I'm not really concerned, but that's because my expectations for them aren't super high. I don't think they're a top 5 team in college basketball. I think they're judged as a top 15 team, which means you have, a sum of really good players, but you also have not a ton of depth. And that's what this Ohio State team has. Cody McMahon, Jelani Cambridge are the main 2 scorers. They scored 18 for Cambridge. McMahon scored 14. No other player scored in double figures for them against Indiana. And the bench, not a ton of production. Chance Gray in the starting lineup, 2 points, 1 for 8 from the floor, 4 turnovers. She averages over 13 points per game on the season. Taylor Theory, Aja Petty, they didn't really contribute on the offensive end. It's hard to win when you only have 2 players playing well. But I trust Ohio State still. I mean, on the road to Indiana, they weren't even favored in that game, and Indiana's unranked. So that should tell you something about the Big Ten.
Yeah, the Big Ten, one of the hardest basketball conferences. That leads us well into our last question before moving to softball. Of the traditional Big Ten teams, who do you think has the best chance to give those West Coasters a run for their money come Big Ten tournament time?
So I'm going to pick Maryland. Now, of course, they did join the Big Ten in 2014, so technically not an original team. But they have a historic head coach in Brenda Frese. They're going to face Indiana later this week. Experienced roster led by Cheyenne Sellers, who was hurt early this year, and that really hurt Maryland. I think they lost to Ohio State, but that was without Sellers. And she was also out for the UCLA game that they ended up losing by 15. They also lost at home to USC, but only by 5 in a game that Sellers had 26. So she's the key to their offense running and their defense as well. Kayleen Schmeichel, all Big Ten player, transfer from Rutgers, absolutely terrific. She averages, I think, a little over 17 points per game. And their stats in the Big Ten just look good. 3rd in field goal percentage and 5th in 3-point percentage. 3rd in rebounds per game behind UCLA and USC. So if I had to pick one other team, it would be Maryland.
All right. Hey, don't sleep on the Terps. They could give UCLA and USC a run. Well, we're excited to bring you this next sport. Again, softball is getting a little bit further into their season, which means we've got more scores. In the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic, number 4 UCLA had a strong overall showing, beating teams like number 5 Tennessee, but they got shut out 1-0 by number 9 Duke in their final game of the event. It was only the Bruins' second loss of the season. In the same tournament, 14th ranked Oregon swept their 5 matches. notably also taking down number 5 Tennessee 1-0 and number 22 Missouri 11-3. The Ducks are currently on a 10-game win streak. The only other Big Ten team receiving votes right now are the Indiana Hoosiers, and they had a tough weekend at the Janine McCaney Memorial Classic, winning 2 and losing 2. The 2 that they lost were both to number 12 Texas Tech. Adam, there's 3 teams right now receiving votes in the Big Ten. Who do you think has been the most impressive so far?
I think Oregon, because a lot of people thought going into the year they wouldn't be near the top of the Big Ten Conference. You could say UCLA, but, I mean, they were a preseason top 5 team, so I don't think that's a surprise that they're in the top 15 right now. But Oregon, you mentioned it, won 10 straight games. They lost to Arizona State in 8 innings, 4-3. That's their only loss of the season, is an 8-inning game to Arizona State, which is a pretty solid team as well. You mentioned it, 1 versus Tennessee and 1 versus Missouri. Those are 2 top teams in the SEC. They do have a pretty light schedule until mid-March in Big Ten play. So now that win streak will get inflated by games that aren't really difficult. So it could get up to like 17, 18 games straight, which is, great, but also the competition level is going to be lower. So Oregon, they were 30-21 last year, and they've looked really solid this year.
Yeah, it's still so hard to tell how teams perform because it's so early.
Yeah.
But one more question, and you can bow out because it's a tough question, kind of because it's still so early. Is there anyone else in your mind who could be ranked come the end of the season?
I mean, technically, Indiana's not ranked. They're just receiving votes. So I'm going to give the edge to Indiana. They were the Big Ten tournament runner-ups last year. Don't have a ton of quality wins. They lost to Texas Tech 8-0 in 5 innings. They also lost to Texas Tech 7-2 the next day. And that's the one ranked team they played as of today. So they really need to get quality wins is what I'm saying, because right now, wins against those lower tier teams, they don't mean that much. But if I was to look across the whole Big Ten, I mean, not that many Big Ten teams have quality wins, so I'm just going to stick with the team that was pretty good last year in Indiana.
All right, the Hoosiers. I mean, there's still so much time, so they can get some of those quality wins. Who knows? Let's move back to the court, but this time it's not basketball. It is tennis. Here are your scores from the last week of action. 3rd-ranked Michigan took down 25th-ranked Oklahoma State 4-2. In similar fashion, the 8th-ranked Buckeyes of Ohio State also took down Oklahoma State in a clean 4-0 sweep. 18th-ranked Washington played twice on the road, taking down unranked San Diego State University 4-3, and unranked University of San Diego 4-3 as well. Finally, 21st-ranked USC just got past Cal Berkeley, winning 4-3 in Northern California. We'll stay here for some swim and dive scores. It was the Big Ten Women's Swim and Dive Championship, and Ohio State won their 10th title in program history. Over the 4-day event, the Buckeyes tallied 904.5 points. 904.5. Right behind OSU in second was Indiana with 777.5 points, followed by the Michigan Wolverines with 771 points. The Swim and Dive Championships aren't until March 19th through 22nd, so there's still a handful of last chance meets for other Big Ten teams to hopefully sneak into the championship meet. And that is going to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big thanks to our producer, Colin Dusick, for making all of this possible. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at B1G_under10. And come back next week for the next episode of Big Ten Under 10.